Coming this fall from SJS Direct in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. You can pre-order your copy of The Man Crisis today on Amazon.com. This week we had two more incidents that I believe fit within the pattern and profile of men in crisis. And in these two incidents we had two beta males who decided to commit suicide using planes, and in one of the incidents it looks like one of the guys wanted to use the plane to try to murder his wife. Now in the first incident we had this Richard Bebo Russell who decided to steal a plane from where he worked, and he decided to fly this plane around, and at one period in time he was being chased by U.S. fighter jets, and eventually what happened was your Richard Bebo Russell decided to crash this plane in an island, killing himself. In the second incident, we had another individual who, after being arrested for domestic violence, decided he was going to go and take this plane and where he worked at, this private jet, and he decided he was going to fly it into his home. And while many people will look at these two incidents as isolated incidents, I clearly see how both of these incidents fit within the pattern and profile I've been talking about regarding men in crisis. Because not only are men in crisis participating in criminal acts and violent acts like mass shootings, where they participate in horrific acts of violence, they also participate in acts of violence like committing suicide. And when it came down to both of these beta males, it's clear to me that both of these men were in crisis for some time, and these acts of violence they were participating in was just another explosion of what I've been calling the beta male rage. And in the Richard Bebo Russell incident, I could clearly see how this guy was your classic textbook beta male. Now, when it comes down to your beta male, on the surface, your beta male will be this incredibly nice guy, this incredibly friendly guy, this guy who is well liked. However, underneath that surface exterior, these men are often simmering and boiling in anger, frustration, and rage, and something just happens in their life to set off that anger. And that's why your Richard Russell sat there and said he was a broken man. Something happened to this man to set off what I call the spark, the short circuit in his mind, which led to the explosion of anger inside of him that led to him stealing this plane and then flying this plane around and doing all sorts of stunts and then being chased by U.S. fighter jets and then eventually going out to kill himself by crashing that plane into that island. Because when it comes down to these beta males, again, these beta males, they have faulty logic, and that faulty logic in their mind, usually due to the way they are raised in these single mother households and households with beta male fathers, leaves them with this logic where they do not complete a full mental circuit. So their logic has them going up to a certain point, then they short circuit, and then as they short circuit, they wind up simmering and boiling in anger for years, and then eventually something triggers that anger and causes them to explode in anger. And that's how these guys can go from this super pleasant, nice guy to a man who will go out here and steal a plane and go out here and commit suicide. Now, one of the motivations I read that they said that Richard Bebo Russell had was he felt he was being underpaid at his job. He felt he was not being paid enough, and he felt that that was one of the motivations for him to go out here and steal this plane and commit suicide. Now, the second man to go out here and take this plane was another man. I believe his name was Dwayne Loud. He decided to steal the plane because he had a domestic violence incident with his wife, I believe, or his ex-wife. And after having this domestic violence incident, this was the thing that led to this man exploding in anger and then deciding to go where he worked and stealing a jet. And then he told his family that to be at the house because he planned to not only kill himself with the plane, but he also planned to murder his family as well with this plane. And again, people will look at this incident as an isolated incident, but it's clearly another incident in a pattern of incidents in what I'm calling the man crisis. And this man crisis is happening because we have, again, 2 to 3 generations of beta males out there, and these beta males are ticking time bombs. And like landmines, you never know what will set one off or what type of destruction will happen when one of these men go off. And while we've had all of these men out here participating in these mass shootings, what's really troubling about these 2 incidents is that these beta males decided, instead of going up to go get guns to murder people, they decided to go out here and take a plane and use it in the same way those Al Qaeda terrorists used planes as missiles to go out here and destroy the lives of people around them. And that's what's really scary about these beta males. Again, as I've stated before, these beta males participate in a spectrum of violent behaviors. And these violent behaviors can range from a screaming fit to punching a hole in a wall to slapping a woman, all the way up to mass shootings or going out here and taking a plane and using it in the same way a terrorist would use a plane as a weapon to go out and destroy the lives of others. And when it comes down to the beta male, the reason why he is participating in these acts of violence is because when it comes down to many of these beta males don't have critical thinking skills, they don't have problem solving skills, and they believe that because if things aren't going their way, they have a right and a justification to go out here and destroy the lives of others. They believe if they cannot be happy, then they're going to go out of their way to make sure everybody around them is miserable. And they're going to do it in a fashion and a way that will allow them to get the most attention for themselves. They believe that if they go out here and participate in things like mass shootings, or go out here and take a plane and fly it into some place and destroy themselves or destroy the lives of other people, they will be able to gain fame through infamy. So that's the other reason why they do this. A lot of these guys do this because they want to get this attention for themselves. They feel like their lives have no value, and they feel like the only way they can get some sort of attention for themselves and some sort of fame for themselves is to be infamous. And with all the mass shooters participating in these mass murders with guns, I'm guessing that your Dwayne Loud and your Russell decided that what they were going to do was use these planes as a way to get attention for themselves and be able to get their name in the news, because they looked at it like, oh, the guns are always on the news, and it's just be seen as another isolated incident. But with the plane, they can get fame and notoriety for going out here and committing suicide and attempting to murder his wife and his family. And that's what's really troubling about these beta males, because as I stated before, when it came down to Stephen Paddock, what we saw was an escalation in the violence, because Stephen Paddock had the 52 or 56 murders under his belt. And with these other mass shooters, I'm seeing that they're trying to escalate things in order to get more attention for themselves, more fame for themselves, and more infamy for themselves. And it's like a game of playing top that. And what's scary about this game of top that is that these men are trying to top themselves in a competition where they're putting innocent people's lives at risk. When you see beta males going out here taking airplanes and using them like weapons, that's a scary escalation of the violence that these men are participating in. Now, the news media will sit there and act like this is just an isolated incident, but it's not an isolated incident, and it needs to be treated like the crime that it is, and it needs to be treated like the act of violence that it is. Because when it comes down to these beta males, the reason why they are participating in these acts of violence again is because these men want attention, these men have low self-worth, these men don't feel a value to themselves, and because they don't feel a value to themselves, they're going to go out here and destroy other people's lives because they don't feel like theirs has any value. And again, America has a real serious problem with these beta males, and they refuse to acknowledge the problem regarding these beta males because in order to acknowledge the problem with these beta males, it means we have to confront women about the way we are raising boys. Because, again, we have raised 2 to 3 generations of these boys due to the feminist movement coming in and telling women that they could raise a boy to be a man on their own. And these boys have learned these feminine life skills and these feminine approaches to life. And because they've learned these female coping skills, that's what makes these guys ticking time bombs, because the way the world works for men is completely different than the way it works for women. And that's why we've got these broken men out here. And these broken men are going out here and participating in these horrific acts of violence and using things like planes as weapons. And when I look at these 2 incidents, again, they are more textbook examples of men in crisis. And the problem that we need to deal with is starting to acknowledge the man crisis that's going on in America. Because if we don't deal with this man crisis that goes on in America, we're going to have an incident that may be just as tragic as 9/11. And what's scary about that is that it'll be a homegrown American white male citizen participating in this act of violence. Because in both of these incidents involving these 2 men, both of these men passed background checks at these airports. Both of these men passed the drug tests. Both of these men did not have criminal records, except for the guy when he just got arrested for domestic violence. And both of these men appear to be these clean-cut, all-American individuals. And that's the scariest part of having to deal with this beta male, is that he appears to be this nice guy, this all-American good guy, and he's the person you would consider to be the least threat to people, but he is the most dangerous individual in the room because, again, like a landmine or a ticking time bomb, you don't know when this beta male will go off, what will set this beta male off when he goes off, or how many lives will be destroyed as a result of this beta male going off. And that's one of the most terrifying things about living in a society where feminists have socially engineered 2 to 3 generations of men to become these beta males. If you'd like to learn more about men in crisis, you can pick up my upcoming book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com this October. And if you want to pre-order a Kindle version of The Man Crisis, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.